Use a big voice to welcome everyone to Hill Center at the Old Naval Hospital. Tom sort of stepped on my usual line, but I'm curious, who has never been in the building before? And this is the first time. Wow, welcome. Please come back. We've got so many fabulous things going on. There's all kinds of information on the chairs. So anyway, welcome to All Politics is Local. It's a terrific conversation series created by Tom Sherwood and Martin Segraves. I'd like to say it's a nod to Tip O'Neill, but we've talked to important people and personalities and enigmatic people, and it is a real pleasure to welcome our moderators, Tom Sherwood and Martin Segraves, and of course, the enigmatic and dynamic Jim Vance. Real honored to have him with us. So the format's very straightforward. You all have been here before, you know. Folks will be in conversation, and if you have questions, could someone hold up the card? Please make a note and just gently look at Lamar and wave it, or Eleanor, and they'll pick up the cards and give them to Mark. So,
no long speeches, just short questions, no preambles.
Thank you for pushing concessions. They will be open afterwards. All right, over to you. Thank you.
Good. Well, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for everyone for coming. We didn't ask you to turn your cell phones off. We have a policy that you don't have to turn them off. If they ring, you have to put it on speakerphone and answer. Who the hell's bothering us?
It's old, huh?
No, it's a great. Well, they haven't heard it yet. Okay. Anyway, this ought to be a conversation. These are very important. We've had an idea that we know people in their jobs, but we don't know them as human beings. And so we thought we would talk to some people in this city about who they are as opposed to what they are. And combine the two and have an interesting conversation. It's free-flowing. We have not discussed the questions with Mr. Vance. I haven't even discussed them with this guy over here. And so we're just going to start. We're going to talk. We invite you to write your question down. We'll take them, and somebody will bring them around to Mark, and he'll sift through them and pick some good ones. And we'll get started. This is not a chronological discussion, it's a conversation. Now, I asked some of the anchors at Channel 4, what should we ask Jim Vance before we get to his early childhood? That was a long time ago. Pat Lawson Muse, 4 o'clock anchor. A wonderful person. I wasn't telling you who she is. She said, why don't you share your junior minutes? You might tell them about it.
I'm sorry, that's funny of me. I can't repeat to you. I can't live without junior mints. I don't know if you have a favorite candy or a favorite cookie or whatever the case may be. But for pretty much all of my life, I have loved junior mints, and I never leave home without them. We get on airplanes, and she always is responsible for the junior mints. For many years, back in the day, a lot has changed in television. One of the things that have changed is the number of people who used to work in the studio on every live broadcast. Among the people who were critical to any success that we might have had was a guy called the stage manager. His name is Mo Duck, who retired, I don't know, 6-7 years ago now. I should have gone with him. But Mo always saw to it that there was a box of junior mints on the table beside the set. And Mo would not put junior mints out for anybody else, for any of the other anchors on any of the other shows. They thought that Mo was just being either selfish to them or whatever the case may be. What they didn't know, because I never told anybody, and Mo and I figured it was nobody's business, I gave them money for those junior mints. And all they ever had to do was slip Mo a couple dollars, and they'd have had some junior mints. That's my junior mint story, and I'm sticking with it.
So you're telling Pat Lawson Muse to buy her own?
Buy her own junior mints.
You're from Ardmore, Pennsylvania. Anybody know where that is?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Well, that's the first shock of the night. Okay. It's a tiny suburb of Philadelphia, maybe about 12,500 people now. It's still less than it was. I checked on the census. It's something called the U.S. Census Bureau. Anyway, it's a very suburban place. You were born somewhere near there, I guess. That's where you lived early. Your father and grandfather were from. How is it that your family was in Ardmore?
That's an interesting question, and I should have expected such from Tom.
If you don't know, just say something.
I do know, and I am not loath to say I don't know when I don't know. What I was thinking of, my most favorite person in all the world for all of my life, and my hero, has always been my grandfather. My grandfather moved his family, which eventually ended up being 16 kids, to Ardmore from a place called Port Deposit, Maryland, back in, right after the turn of the century, I think, he made his move. And he made his move, I learned later, because my grandmother, his wife, was sick and tired of farming and decided, I don't want to live on a farm anymore, nor do I want to raise these kids on a farm. My father, in fact, was born in Port Deposit. He was born in 16. And so, on her insistence, he moved. How he ended up in Ardmore and not Chester or Swarthmore or Upper Darby or any of the other suburban areas around there, I don't know. What I do know, and what I suspect, is that he came to Ardmore because he found employment, except for some explain why he was wrong. He found employment at a place called the Baldwin Locomotive Works. Those of you who know Ardmore, you remember that? It was in Chester. And they used to make some of the largest, most powerful locomotives that ran on most of them, I think, were sold to the Pennsylvania Railroad line. And he worked at that factory for years until one day he came up with an idea. This is not apocryphal. It's, from what I understand from my research, a true story. He came up with an idea, and I can't remember what it was, but it was not unlike the McCoy story. Are you familiar with the McCoy story? Yep. There's a black guy named McCoy. I think it was Philip McCoy. And he worked somewhere, this is back in the 19th century for somebody, and he came up with a coupling device for railroad cars, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's what it was. I may be wrong. But he came up with an improvement that made it such that the guys working on the rail line would always ask, because if their safety was involved, is that the real McCoy? And that's where that phrase comes from. That's another true story. Aren't you glad? Anyway, my grandfather also came up with something. He told his supervisor. His supervisor told his boss. The supervisor got a raise and he got a promotion. And my grandfather got pissed and quit. And in 1931, I think, 2 years after Wall Street collapsed in 29, when this country was in the midst and depth of depression, it's one of the reasons why he's my hero. This little black dude, who had 15 kids at the time, his last child was born in 1932, so he had 15 kids. He quit the one thing that mattered most for most men in America today, and that was a job that they could depend on for a salary every single week or month, whatever it is. He quit a paying job on principle to start his own business. Imagine what it is like now to try to start a business, no matter what it is, anywhere in America today. And with all the resources that are available to us, none of which were available to him, this little dude decided, I can do this, and he did. And it is for that reason, among so many others, that I maintain that's one of the grandest dudes I ever knew that lived in the served. Because that took some serious heart, some major confidence, I can only imagine the terror in that first year or so, trying to make a living with, at that point, I don't know how many mouths he had to feed, whatever the case may be. That's my man all time, because I think that's one of the most courageous things I've ever done in a book. That's why we were in Albany.
That's all we have time for anymore.
I got stories.
I forgot we got a low bid up here. Somebody start the clock. It's like a debate. You get 2 minutes.
Tell me what time.
All right, I'm going to fast forward something. Otherwise, we'll be serving breakfast. So you have credited your father and your grandfather of making you go to college, not just being a workman.
I didn't want to go to college.
You did not want to go. You went to Cheney University?
Cheney State.
Cheney State.
Cheney State Teacher College.
And this year, it's the oldest historically black university, or one of the oldest.
No, it is the oldest.
1837.
1837 started by Quakers.
It's been in a lot of financial trouble, like some of the schools are. They just graduated this year. 169 people graduated this year in May, the 179th year. You got a Bachelor of Science degree in elementary education, and you became a teacher. You taught in Philadelphia for 3 years. What did you teach? 2-minute clock.
I taught how to stay alive, how to survive, how to live to another day, how to act like a decent man and a woman of respect.
What grade were you taught?
7, 8, and 9. Yeah, they were really tough. Real quick. Stupid people in Philadelphia built Strawberry Mansion Junior High School, where I taught, 32nd and Broad, in the middle of 5 different gangs. This was in '64, when there was a huge and terrible gang problem in Philadelphia. The source of most gang kids are junior high school kids who are trying to figure everything out. They don't know anything. And so the gang appeal is very strong. But anyway, as a consequence of that, the kids that came to Strawberry Junior High School had to come from 5 different gang territories to get to where the school was. So they all came with an attitude. They all came armed most of the time. Never one single time was there ever a gun in that school, because this was way before they had access to guns, with lots of knives and other kinds of things like that. And as a consequence, the first year of that school was very difficult, and there was not very much learning at all. Can I tell you a real quick story? There were 3 of us that came from Cheney State. Black Al taught math. Boyd taught science, and I was the English teacher. And after the first couple of days, it became apparent that we had a problem. Here is where things were so very different than what they were now, because things changed. We met one day and decided, okay, from now on, here's what we're going to do. And we started it on a Monday. We would stand out in the hall and let the kids walk into the class. By the way, classrooms then, I don't think I ever had less than 37 kids in the class. They would come into the class and they'd be, all hyped up with their sodas and sugar and every other kind of thing. And I would wait until they all got in there, and they were all, and all 3 of us would talk. They were all in the place. I would walk in and slam the door just as hard as I possibly could, which got their attention. And then I would tell them, order them, sit your ass down, which they would do. And then I would say to them, I need to know, we only had to do this a couple of days, who's the baddest student in this class? And they all pretty much knew who it was. And I would say to him, come in. And he would walk up, boom, and I'd hit him right here. Usually knocking to his knees. And the kids would go, oh, geez. And then I would take him up. And I would hug that kid. And I would tell them, here's what you need to know. I did that because I want your attention. I want it every day, and I want it for the entire 40 minutes that you're in this class. I did that because I love you more than I know how tell you. And I intend to teach you what I know about English, but I can't teach you if you won't let me. I need you to behave in my classroom. The science teacher was doing it, the boy was doing it, a gal was doing it in math. At the end of the day, at the end of 2 days, it became apparent there are 3 classes that we go to, and they would come in and they would the dudes would take their hat off. I had one rule, I gotta take this. I had one rule in my class. 2 rules. Boys, take your hats off, because it's disrespectful to me to wear a hat in my class. Girls, or anybody else, you can't chew gum.
Yay.
But I'm gonna tell you why. I told him, you can't, I don't really care if you chew gum. You can't chew gum in my class because I don't know how to pop it. And all the girls knew how to pop gum. You know what I'm talking about? Pop gum. They could all pop gum, and I couldn't do it. And it's like, I'm the adult in here. You can't do anything in my classroom that I can't do. Right. And that is my rule. You should have seen those girls trying to teach me how to pop gum. I asked every day, no, Mr. Vance, you gotta do it, you gotta do it. I never learned how to pop gum.
Okay, so Segraves are now leaving. I know it's going to be a monologue.
Everything else from there will be in 30 seconds or less.
Okay, we want to get to, maybe you want to ask a question about how you got from teachers to TV. Go ahead. Yeah,
Well, I actually just was been tweeting a little bit of this.
Oh.
I noticed, Jim, that while you have well over 10,000 followers, well, that was going to be my question. You haven't tweeted in over a year.
I will not tweet. They gave me a Twitter account because they told me I have to have one. I mean, the people I work for, and they pay my salary, so I have to do what they tell me to do. But they didn't tell me that you have to yourself tweet every day and all day. Like, you follow Tom? There's not 10 minutes goes by that he doesn't have something, am I right? That he doesn't have something up there.
Half glass of Merlot.
Yeah. And most of it, who cares? No, I haven't tweeted in more than a year. I'm surprised.
I'll have a few things to tweet later tonight.
I don't tweet because I don't want to be bothered with.
Well, we're going to get into social media in a moment if we get out of this 18 minutes. So you worked for a while with the Philadelphia Independent, African American youth organization. Here's a simple one. How did you get to TV? I mean, you were a groundbreaking person in television, as an anchor particularly. So, out of all this background, teaching and knocking kids over and stuff, how did you get to be a TV reporter? And you were in Philadelphia, somehow then you came here as a reporter, what, 1969?
69.
And then you were an anchor in 72, and you're still doing it.
Because I like it. In fact, I love it. I got to TV by accident, and that's the honest to God truth. In 1966, 67, whatever the case may be, I was teaching school. My father-in-law and I, well, he put up the money. We bought a gas station, a little 2-pump station down in West Philly that I was in charge of running. I had a hustle detailing cars, and I had one other gig that I can't remember now, but I was working all the time. I think I got home like 4 hours a day. And I was loving every minute of it, because when you're 26, 27 years old, you do what you like to do. And if there's work, then you go to work. Anyway, my father-in-law then, with one of his partners, bought the old Philadelphia Independent, excuse me, which was one of the oldest black newspapers in the country. It was a weekly. And he came to me one day and he said, I'm buying a newspaper and I want you to be the distribution manager. And I said, okay, what's that? And he said, go talk to this guy at the Philadelphia Bulletin, which was the evening paper. Back then, we had 2 papers to play, the Morning Inquirer and then the Philadelphia Bulletin. Remember that? It used to have 3 as a matter of fact down here, because he had the Daily News. But anyway, I found out what the distribution manager does. I became the distribution manager. In the course of that, there were these wonderful old guys who had been writing for black newspapers, the Amsterdam News, the Pittsburgh Courier, one after another for years, Philadelphia, not Baltimore, and I couldn't get enough of their stories. And I asked them, can I watch you, see what you do? And they would let me go out, follow them, and cover stories, and then I'd watch them write as those old Royal typewriters, and almost every one of them typed with this. Right. I mean, the tip fingers would fly. You've seen kids that can do their thing with, which I can't do either, but I still use one hand. I can't use two. But anyway, I became enamored with what they were doing and the passion that they had for it, even though they were making less than poverty wages at that time because the paper was dying. It only lasted a few years. I became is up. I didn't know that. Thank you. I should have done it with that. In any event,
He was on Wikipedia.
I know that. I got that, and then there was a buddy of mine who was, I used to hang out with interesting people. One of them was kind of a gangster. He was a hustler, and he got a job as a DJ at a radio station in Philly. There were two black stations. One was WDAS. Ed Bradley and I, remember 60 Minutes? He and I played ball together. Best man's first wedding, best man my first wedding, and my second too. But anyway, we came out of school together, and while he was teaching, he went to WDAS, and I went to WHAT, where Sonny Hopson, the Mighty Burner, had his show, and I would go into the show, and remember Rip and Read News, it's when at the top of the hour, the DJ would take 5 minutes, and they would just really rip the wire copy off the machine, and they would read exactly what was on the wire copy. Sonny hated to do that, so I would go in a couple times a day and do the Rip and Read News on WHAT AM. And then I went to a party because Sonny's wife had a friend who had a friend who worked at an employment agency.
We need a chart.
Worked at an employment agency, Snelling and Snelling, in Chester Street, Philadelphia. And I went down there, and I went out on several different applications. I went back for the third time because I didn't like either one of the first two. And the reason I'm in television today is because this woman was sick and tired of me. And I went in and I said, you know, do you have anything? She never looked up. And she said, all we have is a television station looking for a reporter, and then the words, but you don't know nothing about that. And I laid my hand on the desk. I got his attention. And he said, give me the application. And I took it. I had no clue what a television reporter did. But I resented the fact that this woman telling me what I might be interested in, what might be suitable for me, whatever the case may be. She just pissed me off, which is why I went and applied for the job. I applied for the job. It was horrible. My Washington, the audition wasn't a Washington. It was the worst thing you've ever seen in your life. At the end, the guy called us all in one at a time. There were 7 people there at the time. I was the last one. I walked in. He had his feet up on the desk. Hardy Minster came from New York. Hands hand behind his head. Hardy Minster said to me, first words I walked in, you're a pussycat. I knew I wasn't going to get this job. My arm was in a cast because I was playing ball back then.
You're punching kids.
It had been for 2 months. It was itching. I remember the old plastic hat. It itched like crazy. It was summertime. Hardy said, you are a pussycat. I took my glasses off, took my coat off, and said, you think I'm a pussycat? Get up out of that chair. I will keep your hunky ass up one side and down the other. We'll find out who's a pussy. Get up. He started laughing. And then I'm thinking, oh, man, he's up in my head. He's got me. And I started laughing. He said, what are you doing for the rest of the day? I said, I'm looking for a job. He said, let's go get something to eat. We went out and got drunk as Cootie Brown. And he hired me. I saw Hardy 15, 20 years after that. This was 1968. March of 60, no, February of 68. February of 68. Something. I went, and 15, 15, 20 years later, I met him down at Jean Paul. Jean Pierre, what was that restaurant down on Cape Street?
John Pierre, the French boy.
Yeah.
The one I never went to.
Yeah. I was trying to impress the guy. And I said to him, why did you hire me? He had all kinds of people with experience and every other kind of thing. And he said, I don't know. And I'm like, Hardy, give me some help here. Why did you hire me? I need to know. So I don't know. It just felt right. And that was why and how I got into this business. I love that man. He died some years ago. My grandfather was a hero. Hardy Mincer was one of the coolest guys that I've ever known. And either one of them was stupid or one of the most perspicacious guys that I've ever known in my life. But why he gave me a job to this day, I still don't know because he wouldn't tell me. I don't know. That's all he would say. Any other questions?
Well, I'm not sure I can formulate one. But you know, you came to WRC in 1969. I was in the Navy in '68 when King was killed, and I was downtown. I saw the city. I saw a lot of that happen. All that stuff. Tell me, you were a reporter. You were one of the early African American reporters. You were given what I call a decent job. Just from before, how did you get to become an anchor? Who did you hit in the chest? Become an anchor?
Only those 2 weeks. I swear to God. I don't know. When I got here, there was Marilyn Robinson, there was Max Robinson, no relation, a guy named Baker Morton, and Reggie Bryant. And that was it.
What did the TV station see?
I don't know. Okay, there's a story with that. But wait a minute, I'm not going to tell you the story because I really don't want to offend anybody, so let me clean it up. I had a news director. Okay. I was on the street every day for 2 years. One day, I got called into the news director's office and he said, you have to go home. And I'm thinking, fire me already? I just got started. And he was like, no, you got to go home because HR says you have not had a day off. I think it was 4 months, 5 months, or something like that. And you can't be liable if you drop dead on the job. And I said, I don't need a day off. Long story short.
Those same people aren't in HR today.
No. It's not only 4 months. Is that all? I was loving being on the street, is what I'm trying to say. When he called me in and said, I want you to anchor the 6 and 11, I refused. And I went home and talked to my then wife, and she said, how much are they going to pay you? And I said, it's not that much more. And she said, cool. And a couple days later, he came back and said, this is what you have to do. And I asked him why. He just asked me. What he said was, his answer was, because you make love to the lens. And what? And he said, lots of people think they want to be an anchor and can be an anchor. Most of the good ones are people who have 2 things that you have. One, a work ethic that is tireless and can't pull them off the job or pull them away from work. And the other thing is they are comfortable with the lens. There's some really good reporters who are not comfortable with the lens. What's that guy, the black guy who was a columnist for the Post for all of those years? What's that again? Bill Raspberry. We tried so hard. You guys remember William Raspberry? Yeah. Wonderful writer, wasn't he? Excellent columnist. We tried everything we possibly could to get Bill Raspberry on the air. He couldn't do it. He wanted to, but he wanted to because he was going to get paid a whole lot more money. But he couldn't do it because it just wasn't comfortable for him. It didn't work for him. I remember when Tom first came to the station. I followed him
89.
very closely, you know, as pieces in the Washington Post, and I was thrilled when they told me that Tom was coming to the station, in large part because of Tom's Rolodex. In fact, remember Rolodex?
Yep.
We used to actually have. Tom knew everybody and knew everything about everybody, and the reason people would take his call is because he knew stuff that they didn't want anybody else to know. They were scared to death of this guy. Tom came, and I remember how you remember too, how terribly uncomfortable Tom was on his first couple of months, 6 months, I guess, maybe even more, on the air. Nobody knew the story better, more deeply, more insightfully, more comprehensively than Tom did. Writing it was never an issue. He could knock it out like that. But standing up in front of the camera was a whole nother animal.
I still don't like it, but you know, I just want the information. But back to you.
I'm going to get off of you.
Yeah.
I got a story there.
Oh, we got stories. That's another 2 hours.
30 seconds.
Would you like to join the conversation? It's early years.
30 seconds.
On your days off that you get now, more than you did back then. You like to hunt, don't you?
I used to. I don't hunt anymore. I do still shoot. I have membership in 2 different gun clubs. Mostly now I love to fish, and I love my scooter.
Your scooter's a little bigger than the scooter.
Yes, it is quite a bit bigger than the scooter. And last year, for example, Christine and I, we went, how many miles?
4,732.
The answer was 4,732.
Not that she remembers down to the mile. But all out, you know, through the national parks, Zion and Yellowstone and Glacier, and then down in the Sturgis and then back across the country. I love that biking. The reason I love that biking country is not the least of them. All the things that I am used to on a normal day will go away. They don't exist anymore when I'm on that bike. And there's a whole other set of, another level of consciousness that I am into on that bike so that I won't die. One of the reasons that I'm sure that we're still alive is that I'm still scared to death right now. I'm still scared to death of that bike. And if it happens. And so I ride like that. That does not mean that I go 55 miles an hour all the time. But what it is, I give it a great deal of respect. And that is what I love to do as much.
Have you ever still?
I'm a guy talking. She was down with me one time.
Can we say who that is over in the corner?
This is Christina, my significant other. Christina, my wife.
We'll walk through in a moment.
Right. But anyway, yes, been down a couple of times. But you know, the thing about going down on a bike is the same thing as falling off a horse. You know what I had one time? George Michael. Remember George?
That's my next question, George. Take your question, George. If you have a moment, stop listening. Right?
He, you know, raised horses, and he raised. He came to raise black and white paints was his specialty. I bought 2 of George's horses. The first one I bought was for my wife at the time. Valentine's Day came. Valentine's Day comes, you know, are you? Screw Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day. Total Hallmark holiday.
Right.
And I felt like such a chump and a sack for being sucked into this, but knowing if I don't, then I got hell to pay. I had no idea what else to do for this woman, so I said, I went and bought a horse for her.
Did she want a horse?
Huh?
Did she want a horse?
She did after she got it. Anyway, bought a horse for her, kept it over in Rock Creek Stables, and she was having the biggest fun, getting up every day, buying all this tack, doing all this stuff, loving life so much. It's like, oh, you ain't gonna be the only one. I would have bought one too. The point I've been, why did I say, what happened to that? Hold on a second.
George Michael.
Oh, George Michael. Yeah. Falling off a horse, falling off a bike. Thank you. Who said that? I appreciate that. Sharper mind than mine. falling off a horse, well, that horse took me more times than I can count. But falling off a horse is, the lesson you've got to get right back up on. It's the same thing with the bike. You go down on the bike, you've got to get back up on that thing.
Well, we got some of the questions behind the marquees, but it's through the. Let's talk about, we mentioned George Michael, and there still are a hole in the heart that they want to do George Michael. He was outrageous on the air. He was warm-hearted and kind off the air. Although he screamed like hell. Right there. But you've been co-anchoring with Doreen Gifford since 1989. Doreen wants to be the last. Doreen has a question. She didn't say it, I'm going to say it the way she wanted to say it. Why the hell don't you read the teleprompter rather than making up all the things? The teleprompter operated crazy, and everyone else who's trying to follow along with the show that's heavily scripted, you just change the verb tense, ignore the first sentence, drop the last. I mean, it drives people crazy. Why do you do it? Doreen asked. And what do you think of Doreen?
Was that her question? Was that your question?
Follow the teleprompter.
I am so grateful to have had the opportunity to work with that woman for the last 25 years, whatever it is. I cannot tell you what a thrill and what a joy and what a privilege that is. That's a total pro and just the most magnificent, among the most magnificent human beings I've ever known in my life. I have never read a script as it's written in my entire life. And that's what I'm talking about, my own scripts, or anybody else's as well. Because, okay, here's how I've always approached my job. I approach my time in the studio in front of the camera with you, wherever you are, as my kitchen. And what I mean by that, when I was a kid, in Oregon, we all had coal heat, the furnaces, and we didn't always have, everybody didn't always have money to pay the coal man. And people in my neighborhood, there was no, okay, you can pay me next week. You would pay them right away, or you can get them coal. So a lot of houses weren't always warm in the wintertime, except the kitchen. Kitchens were always warm because they had the oven in the kitchen. Turn the oven on, open the door, never cold in the kitchen. And in the kitchen is where people would come and they would gather. When they came to gather, that's where they would talk. That's where they would share information about what happened today or what they thought of what might have happened someplace else. Kitchen talk, when people came into your kitchen, when I went into your kitchen, I wasn't trying to impress you with my syntax. I wasn't trying to impress you with my vocabulary. I wanted you to know what I know. I wanted to share with you the information that I had. And I wanted to do that in the best way and the clearest way that I possibly could. My notion of doing television news, anchoring television news, has always been the kitchen. I've had the privilege of talking to both Rather and Contract about that very subject. And I am so thrilled that they agreed with me. If they hadn't, I'd have changed my mind. Because my reference for the two of them, for Rather and for Contract, there was one more, I'm sorry. They were Brinkley first. You know that when my first went on scene, David Brinkley used to sit like whatever, sitting like that. That's how close we were sitting to each other. Those were back in the days. Anybody in here over 70? If you are, you will remember. I don't know where your workplace was, but in my workplace, at everybody's desk, there was something in the drawer. It could be bourbon, it could be scotch, it could be rum, it could be gin, it could be vodka. There was one guy who always kept ouzo. Nobody ever went to his desk. Nobody ever wanted to drink that stuff. But anyway, they agreed that less is more, simpler is better. And most of our writers are taught to write by a particular style. We have consultants that we pay tons of money to come in to tell our writers how to get your attention. words to use. Our writers write words like, what's that thing we do now? We got this new thing. We're digging into the story. Remember that one? We're digging into the story.
We're digging in deeper.
Digging in deeper something, and all these other this crap. And I tell them all when they're writing copy, don't write that crap for me, because I'm not going to do that. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Bottom line, when it's my turn on the air, I have always had the notion I have the final name. And with all the producers and the editors and everybody else, I got the final name. And so therefore, whatever's on the teleprompter, it can probably be improved just a little bit. What happens is I often get into a whole lot of trouble. And I get off somewhere, and to me sometimes we'll sit back and like, let me see, get out of this one, what?
You don't get to see that often.
And I was,
with her sitting there.
oh, she does. She does just like that. You're deep shit now, but what are you going to do? But anyway, I figured, you don't want to hear no.
Right.
You want to hear what happened today. It's that simple, and there's no need to complicate the news. It's hard enough to digest the news, to hear the news. Good Lord, my mission is keep the channel.
It turns out to be basically two arenas, Jim. I'll let you pick. People either want to ask you political questions or questions about news.
Yeah.
And I would just
Talk
say
about news, because
for the questions about news that don't get answered, I would refer everyone to this brilliant interview in the October 2014 Washingtonian with Jim Vance.
For you and Segraves.
Yeah.
Oh, that
Brilliant, insightful, and
Copies in the lobby.
do pick it up.
Yeah.
No, he does a show for Channel 50, which I don't think anyone even knows what the hell it is. But he did a show, and the TV station would not run the interview because they thought it was like, what?
That it was promoting the competition.
Promoting the competition. So he took his transcript to Washingtonian, and they ran it.
And paid handsomely.
How much did you get
Thank you
for
very
it?
much.
Not a dime, but that's okay. I'm always going to
Let's
have
talk
a
about Jim's tough analysis of news today. That's right.
It sucks.
Well,
Good work.
as an English,
You want to go further?
maybe as an English,
Well, there are a couple of ranges of questions, but he makes that clear in the interview, the October 2014. You can still find it online. Why do broadcast anchors button their jackets?
wow, good friend, who asked that question?
That is cool. That's a good question. It presents them with a jacket button, in my view. Except there are some of us who should not be buttoning our jackets. Yeah. And well, there's two things going on. One, our bellies are bigger.
Who shouldn't be buttoning their jackets?
It's not. I can button mine. But there are those among us who shouldn't because their bellies are too big and they refuse to acknowledge it. The other thing is a lot of anchors. You ever notice how high they sit up on those stools? I make it a point when an anchor, like Tom has a long trunk. I have a very short trunk and a very long leg. Tom comes in, you can sit down now, and you can see Tom is at least 2 or 3 inches higher than me. Well, I'm 6'2", what are you?
6'3".
6'3".
But I stand up straight.
Yeah, but the deal is, we have a lot of anchors who feel that they have more power the higher they sit in their stools. And when you do that, and your jacket is buttoned, what happens is you get this. And you get anything, whatever's under there, the ties on this. Anyway, it's not a good presentation if you got a big gut and if you're sitting too high. But I hope that mine doesn't show.
Absolutely not.
Thank you very much.
Next question. Next question.
One person wants to know, and I will just say as someone, I'm very conscious of this for myself when I'm on TV, is when we make mistakes. And not factual mistakes here, because facts. where we misspeak, we flub up, I tripped on camera, all these just looking
You
stupid.
get tongue-tied.
What was your best moment that you remember, and what was your worst fail on TV?
Let's go to the worst fail.
Well, I don't know if it's the best of the words. It might have been both at the same time. 1970. When did Jimmy Carter and Joe Ford? When Something like that.
So
I went on the air. You said so? It was
No,
I
it's
went
president.
on the air.
We're in one now.
Why
The program.
I waited until Tom was done and then I'm used to doing this.
1976.
Okay.
Your worst
They
moment.
were running and I got on air and I forget who my co-anchor was, but I had the lead. And it was something to the they were both campaigning at the same time in Indiana. Usually they try to avoid each other. Both in Indiana at the same time. And I got on the air just so full of myself because I was, it's one of those days when you feel better about your job than other days. And I got on the air, good evening today, Gerald Cord and Jimmy Farter were both. And like I said, there were 3 cameramen, stage manager, co-anchor, Willard of all people, Willard, and I forget who the sports guy was. Everybody just disappeared because they're all over the place. Dying laughing, and I'm like, what? And I'm carrying on with this, with the presentation, and only then did it occur to me, just before we went to, just before we went to film, oh Jesus, Jimmy Farr. And at which point, I hurried into the tape and then, joined everybody else in laughing. Here's the cool thing about that. If I had done that today, this thing would have lit up. Luckily, people had to actually sit down, take a pen, find a paper, write a letter, or pick up the phone and hope somebody would answer. That was my best, and it might have also been my worst at the same time.
Wendy Rinker wants to, our anchor, she wants to know what you think about this schematic where you have to get up from the anchor desk and walk over to the live desk or the other desk or the other 2 or 3 spots where they move around like pieces of the furniture. What? She says, what the hell does that do?
You will notice that maybe once a week, maybe, all of 6 and back before January was 6 and 11. I might do that, maybe agree to do that maybe once a week or every 2 weeks. I think it's one of the stupidest things that they've ever come up with. The people who run news now, they are weird. And they come up with notions based on, what is that thing called?
Talking forward.
Yeah,
focus.
Focus groups.
There you go.
Get a people,
I feel like we're having
people in the room together. What do you think of this guy? What do you think of that person? How do you like it? All these other kinds of things. And then they design the news broadcast based on what 8 people who you already got filled up with donuts and crap. They just want to go to the bathroom. Say. There's this notion that action and movement by the anchors somehow or another will cause you to feel more involved in the process or in the program, and that it creates an energy that is a positive energy that relates and goes out to the audience. I keep trying to tell the people I work for and others that old thing, who was Kissinger doing with this, nothing new under the sun? Did anybody here remember Action News?
Yeah.
Back in the day? Action News was the kind of thing, almost the same kind of thing that we're doing now. It was a rat-a-tat-tat kind of thing, and people were moving and buzzing, and they actually programmed what they call crosstalk, where the anchors would offer their opinions about, different stories, whatever kids would do, which I think is that. But they were doing that. Let me answer the question. I think that sucks. And I think it sucks because my question every time they tell me, on this one, they were going to move around, so I know their wireless mics. My question was, how does this advance the product? And the answer was, it doesn't. It's a production technique. And I said, well, the hell with it. And they were like, hey, well, you can say that if you want to, but this is what we're going to do. The answer to the question is, I think it sucks. I think it's an artifice. I think it is unnecessary. As a matter of fact, I think it might even be a distraction. And I'm not sure that it in any way at all advances the product, which is delivering disseminating information.
We're going to turn serious for a moment. That's serious.
What?
I know we were, but I'm going to talk about you again, because that's why we're here. Marie suggested I bring this up for one time. Okay. We have a program called Changing Minds at Channel 4. For more than a year, we've done any number of different mental health stories, trying to bring mental health issues out of the fog so people will actually talk about it. I think a lot of people know that in the early days you had drug issues, you were suspended or something early on. But more recently, I don't know if you actually talked to Marie, or you talked to someone on our air about dealing with depression. She said I should ask you about it. What should we know about that without knowing the whole story?
One of the things for which I am most grateful is the awareness that acknowledging one's shortcomings, flaws, and sharing the experience of dealing with it or them, whatever it may be, is liberating and enlightening, like two other things that are. I was never loath to acknowledge that I was an addict, nor am I now. Not that I'm an addict, but an addict. My drug of choice was cocaine. I'm clean from that now, 29 years. But for all of those years and for many years before that, I made a comment to Doreen, as a matter of fact. We did an interview as part of the Changing Minds about my suffering from depression and dealing with it. And I made a comment to her that I've been depressed all my life. And I meant that because I don't know a time in my life when I didn't feel totally unworthy, useless, and every other kind of negative thing that you can go into without getting too deep into it. And it was only through therapy, in my case, talk therapy, 5 years, that I was able to come to, I'm going to say something in a way of agreeable terms with my condition. The fact of the matter is, I still suffer depression. But I don't let depression kick my butt like I did for so many years when I didn't know what to do or what it was and how I should deal with what I was feeling. I had tools that I did not know were available to me before. They always had been. One time, I remember one of the most useful discussions I had with my therapist one time was when I mentioned to him that I almost feel ashamed to be sitting in his office, one man telling another man all the things that terrify me, and all my weaknesses, and all the things that which all my failures. Because in my family, with those 15 uncles and my father, and then my grandfather, that kind of thing is absolutely unthought, unheard of. And the fact of coming to realize with all of my love and my admiration and my respect, my honor all of those guys that brought me up and taught me pretty much everything I know that's worth anything in terms of honor and integrity and work ethic and every other kind of thing, those guys also damn near killed me because the last thing that my father, any of his 7 brothers or any of his 8 sisters or whatever, or my grandfather ever would have even imagined doing was going to a shrink. That was absolutely unthinkable at the end of the day. And they suffered as a consequence of that. They did not all live good and wonderful lives. They're all wonderful people. But I didn't get my depression all by myself at a whole cloth. And I am so incredibly grateful for whatever it was that caused me one day to decide maybe I am not King Kong and maybe I can't handle this by myself and maybe it's okay to sit down in front of another man and tell him all the things that I'm afraid. And because as soon as I did that, well, thank you. But the final part of that is how wonderful what we're doing. Asked me, so do you want to talk about that? My first thought was, are you kidding me? And really, a nanosecond later, yeah, let's do that. And the reason I'm happy about that and also happy to talk about that now is because I cannot tell you how gratifying it is to hear from so many people. I went home the night that piece aired, and a neighbor who had not spoken to me in the 5 years I've been living where I live now, he walks his dog up down the street all the time because he's got nothing else to do. And I go by and, hey, maybe not, maybe not. He stood out there and did like this. And by the time he got to the car window, he was weeping. This is what big, tough, looked like King Kong on steroids. And this dude is leaning on my car window, crying like a baby. Because he had the same experiences with his mom that I acknowledged that I had with mine. And he's had the same terrors that I have experienced, but never before in his life. He kind of thought, like I did, I'm probably the only one like this. And so he kind of thought the same thing too. But anyway, that's my best point. The point is, I'm gratified to be able to share the fact that I got lots of holes. This is a piece of cheese with a whole bunch of holes in it. But you know, I'm still standing and I'm still moving forward.
I was suggesting that we go a few minutes over, if it's all right with the audience. The work you do. We're on this 1-year anniversary of Charleston, Manhattan Church. The 1 week out of Orlando, 49 got cancer. Off. Sandy, which I thought would have changed the country's course. 20 children, years ago, got dead. When you are the agent and you see the stories, and for one moment you're talking about the cat that climbed the roof and couldn't get down, and then you'd have to turn to a different camera. And I know they had to try to fix the story so there's not too much jarring change, but you see a lot of grief as things. How does that affect you? You just a story.
No, it's never just a story. But yes, we do keep moving. I am not immune to the pain and the misery that so many of us suffer. I saw a piece a couple of weeks ago about a woman who studiously reads obituaries in the Post every day because she gets something from it that she finds difficult to put the exact words on. But among them are the fact that that's not her in the obituary. And that she's still alive and reading this thing. As it regards the horror of what constitutes news, I have never not been affected or felt something about whatever the story may be. Stories that we don't even put on the air. But I've never not felt it. What I learned a long time ago. David Brinkley. You know, Brinkley used to eat a lot. Remember when, what's his name? Slow guy opened the diner up in
Jeffrey
Illinois. Opened up the diner in Connecticut. Brinkley used to go there all the time, and I would sit with him from time to time, sometimes late at night. We talked about that one time, and he was talking about how somehow or another he adapted the skill or whatever it is of leaving it at 4,001 Nebraska Ave. And how useful that skill was to him that he could leave at NBC. I never developed that skill, or certainly not as sharply, completely as he did. And there are times, and Christine will tell you, there are times I come home, and I really don't want to say anything for an hour or two. And I have to breathe and kind of let it out with the carbon dioxide and in the good air with the oxygen and everything. But it takes a while. Sandy Hook is what? I have more times than you could probably recognize came that close to losing it when we hit the carpet. And somehow or another, you develop these things to get past that. But many times, many days, I will go through the whole day because with these stories, it's not just between 6 and 7. It's interviews and stuff all day long. And I got it because I'm writing and trying to edit and trying to do one thing or another about it. But at the moment of delivery of the story on the air, all of a sudden here it comes. And it's only truly by the grace of God that I have not cried. People, I've seen all kinds of stuff about when Cronkite cried when the
Kennedy
assassination, but also challenge. Well, good Lord, how could you not? And how could anybody not feel that? And how wonderful of him to show his humanness in that regard. And anyway,
Obama did that with Sandy Hook.
yes, and was criticized. Men got to get over this thing. Tears being associated with weakness. That is such a bunch of crap. And then on the other hand, there are other guys. They cry and everything. What's the old coach? He was with the Eagles and then finally won with the Rams. And then coach. Anyway.
All right, we got that.
Yeah, you got it.
Segraves has another
Are we
one.
done?
Almost.
As much as you would like it to.
Actually, I'm having a good time.
Well, while you are able to hold back the tears, you seem to have a little bit more trouble holding back laughter. And while your Jimmy Carter is actually doing okay on Twitter for
Yes, he is.
your uncontrollable laughter with George Michael on YouTube has been viewed hundreds of thousands of times.
The model.
Millions.
This is, if you don't know it, where they're anchoring and they show this video of models on the runway and they're feeling brave or anything. I don't think it's funny when people fall, but they fall.
You don't laugh at that? You don't laugh at
No,
that?
I'm sorry. I don't laugh at people. I don't.
We have things at the end of the show. It's called a kicker. It's supposed to lighten things up at the end of, and here's my kicker. So on this particular day, do you know that was almost 20 years ago now? And At the end of the show, we had a piece about a woman on a runway at some high fashion event somewhere, and she had those shoes. I don't know why women would even put those things on their feet. I think for the platforms that go like 28 inches in the air or something like that. And she came down and was hardly making it down, and then on her way back, her legs were like going. I mean, they were just going this way and that, and she was doing everything in her power to stay up. Boom! Down she went, and I'm going through this, and I got this. I'm under control. Oops, she fell down. But then she got back up, and she went down again. And she went down the second time. By then, George is over there. And I lost it. I just completely lost it, and he didn't help me at all. And here's the deal. That thing, I think the last time I saw it had 20-some million views. But here's the good and the bad we were talking about before. It troubles me that of all of my 47 years of trying to establish myself as a person of some credibility and some substance and every other kind of thing, that's my legacy. On the other hand, this is the truth. 3 weeks ago, I got an email from a guy in Harare, Zimbabwe. Is Harare, Zimbabwe? Yeah. Harare, Zimbabwe, who emailed me to say that whenever he has a bad day, and I've read this so many times, whenever he's having a bad day, he clicks that up, everything changes. And all he is laugh. And so I'm thinking it might be okay if what I'm left with after these years is I cause people to take 20 seconds and feel that all the troubles and the woes will wash away and they can laugh, and I'm thinking that that's probably all right. Real quick, I tried to get in contact with that woman because MSNBC came up about 5 years ago, and they want to talk about it, and, you know, how it's gone viral and everything. And what I learned was before MSNBC came, she was from Poland, and soon after that particular runway event, she fell in love with some guy and went back to Poland. And as of 5 or 6 years ago, the last I heard was a grandmother. I wanted to get in touch with her to tell her, assure her, I was not laughing at her. I swear to God I wasn't. But at the event, at the fact of what was going on at that particular time, and I really wanted to apologize if I, in any way, or she could, I'm sure she had to see it at some point or another, if she thought that, you know, I was making fun of her, which I was not. I have not been able to get in touch with her. If any of you know where that woman is, please let me know. I would be delighted.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're over time. Mark Segraves and I thank you for coming, and we would ask you
So
to thank Jim Vance.